Okay, so in the last video, we talked about how to think about and start assembling your content roadmap and the benefits of compiling and putting together a content roadmap. Here's basically what you're going for. This is just a visual representation to share the thinking, but what you're going for is throwing paint at the wall, and you just want to see what sticks. You don't know what's going to stick. You never really know until you start writing things. And usually what I've found is writers who begin the journey of online writing walk in with a set of assumptions. You know, they assume they know what readers want from them. They assume that certain topics are going to perform better than others just because that's how they're thinking about it. And it's not until they start the writing process that they end up learning that their assumptions weren't really correct, and the things that they thought were going to work didn't, and the things they didn't think were going to work did. And I have a great story that kind of exemplifies this. Is one of the clients that we were working with at Digital Press. He was the CEO of a biotech company, and, you know, really successful guy, very heady scientific industry. And of course, when we start working together, you know, he wanted to start writing articles and essays on the internet. He made the assumption, I'm in biotech, so I should write about biotech. That's what everyone wants to hear about from me. And we forget, we gloss over that moment. You know, we even with our own writing, we don't really think very consciously, why am I thinking that this topic in particular is what people want to hear about from me? Because we don't know. We don't really know until we get out there and we start writing things. And so that was his assumption. You know, that was at least a starting point. So we start there. We write articles with him for about 6 months. And, you know, they were good. He was building his library. You know, he's seeing just kind of slow and steady, consistent growth. And he was having some people in his industry read his pieces. I mean, he was experiencing the things that you would look for and want to experience by writing on the internet. But he hadn't seen or had any of those standout pieces where you have this data point that's like, whoa, what? That's telling me something different or something that I hadn't expected. And so we get around the 6-month mark, and he shows up to his call, because that's how we were doing these ghostwriting. This was our ghostwriting process. He shows up to his call, and he basically says, you know, I came up with this really random idea, you know, allow yourself to create junk. And he had been, over the weekend, he was watching his son play baseball. And he was like, as I was watching my son play baseball, I was just thinking about life. And I want to write about some life lessons that I've been thinking about, just reflecting on my relationship with my son. Well, that piece, which was nothing like everything else we had written for 6 months, outperformed everything by a factor of 10. It did, I mean, it went crazy viral, did something like 250,000 views in a day. It was his most successful piece by far. And all of a sudden that changed his thinking. That opened a door of, I didn't know that could work. You know, I assumed that that wouldn't work. And then you learn that it does. He learned that it did. And so this is the representation of that. This is what you're going for. On the internet, no one reads linearly anymore. No one really is going to go through your library and go, you wrote this first, then this second, then this third. You know, the way we read in our social feeds is spontaneous now. We just wait for Twitter to serve up what it is that we should read next. We wait for Facebook to serve up what we should read next. Instagram's the same way. TikTok's the same way. It's all the same. And this idea of linear reading is outdated. That's how it was 20 years ago when the concept of a blog first came out, but that's not how we read today. And so because that's not how we read today, you shouldn't have any pressure around what happens if I try this idea. What if it doesn't work? Because no one's going to see it anyway. If it doesn't work, then it just gets buried in the algorithms and it doesn't matter. But if it does work, it's a standout data point that shows you, hey, this new and different area of interest is something that I can explore. And so this is what you're going to end up having after 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, a year, 2 years. This is what your library starts to look like. And it's this compilation of all these different data points, some broad, some niche, some about your industry, some that work, some don't, some go viral, most don't, some get a ton of engagement. And that's really the goal. And so how you facilitate this process, how you throw more and more paint at the wall, is you have to just endlessly come up with new ideas. And how you do that is I use this kind of model that I've created for myself called this endless idea generator. And the first step is, what do you want to write about? What are you diving into? What do you want to explore? What's the topic? Even in a broad sense, like here are just some random examples. I want to write about writing, or I want to write about biotech, or I want to write about what it's like teaching elementary school kids. I want to write about eating gluten-free, I'm gluten-free. There's a bunch of stuff that you can write about. And the first step is going, this is the thing. This is the content. The second step, and I realize this is the bridge that most people don't have. The second step is, how are you going to communicate that idea? What's the format? What's the approach that you're going to use to talk about that thing? Because you can talk about each one of these things in very different ways. I could write a article teaching the reader about writing, or I could write an article that's critiquing the way that the written word is today, or I could write about, lessons that I've learned over the years as a writer. It's the same content, but it's changing the format and changing the approach that makes it different. And I noticed that's the bridge that isn't conscious for a lot of writers. And so this piece is essentially you will never run out of ideas by using this, is what's the approach that I'm going to funnel the idea through. And there's 10, I'd say, that are pretty proven at this point. Once you become aware of these, you're going to notice them everywhere. They're all over the internet. Everything from how-to articles, lessons learned. Here's a bunch of mistakes I made on my journey. Here's a compilation of quotes related to the thing I'm writing about. Here are the ways to do something. Here are tools you can use. Here's trends we should be paying attention to. Here's an interesting stat. Here are the reasons why something happens. And here's a handful of examples that make the point that I'm trying to make. Each one of these is basically a proven approach at this point. And it's proven because readers have validated in the market that when information is organized in these ways, those pieces are easier to read. And I want to make a note here that this is not, like, when you see this, don't think, oh, that's a BuzzFeed article, because it's not. Go read Wall Street Journal, New York Times, The Atlantic, whatever it is that you read at that level, or what you see as being this advanced expert level writing. They use these formats all the time. Here's how to go get vaccinated, right? That's a how-to article, or a CEO going, here are the lessons that I learned acquiring that company. These formats are everywhere. So my suggestion is, anytime you come up with an idea, the very next thing you should ask yourself is, how am I going to communicate that idea? And these are really easy places to start. The third step then, and this is kind of an important piece, especially to introduce to the reader somewhere in the introduction, is, why are you the person worth listening to on this specific topic? And this is a really misunderstood element of online writing, because, again, going back to the excuses we talked about, or fears that writers have, one of the big excuses or fears, right, is, I'm not ready yet. I'm not an expert yet. And again, going back to if you're writing for the version of yourself 6 months ago or a year ago, you are an expert because you did it. You did the thing. You are you today, which is further along than you 6 months ago. So that in and of itself, right, is a reframe. But there's a couple different ways that you can use or show your credibility to the reader. And they don't have to be, I'm the president of the United States and that's why you should listen to me. So one is, you actually are the expert on the topic in the sense that you've done the thing that you're explaining. So for example, it doesn't have to be a big fancy title. If I say I've read 100 books, here's what I learned. Well, I'm the expert because I did the thing that I'm talking about. So just the fact that you've done the thing you're writing about makes you the expert, quote unquote, on that topic because it's your perspective that's valuable. The second form of credibility is, okay, you might not be the expert, but you went out and you curated all the other experts. So you went and found the most relevant podcasts on that topic, or you listened to the most relevant speeches on that topic, or you read the most relevant books on that topic. You went out, you gathered all the information, and you're curating it for the reader, which I make the joke all the time means that now you are the expert of curating those experts in that niche, in that area of interest. And that's all you have to do. The third, which is probably the most common, but it's not conscious. And so the reason why I want to make it conscious is because then you can choose which one of these am I really using and how can I lean into it more. So this one is, look, I'm just sharing my opinion. I might be an expert. I might not. I might be curating experts. I might not. I might not have even done the thing that I'm writing about. But my ability to articulate it is why you read it. And the example that I'll give here is, for example, I got my Inc. magazine column in 2016. I was 26 years old, 25. I don't even know if I'd turned 26 yet. Still working my first job out of college. Had never started my own company yet. Wasn't an entrepreneur. Was just a copywriter at a digital agency. And yet, when I was writing for Inc., I would write about business advice all the time. And my mentor, who was also my boss, he would kind of like make fun of me sometimes, and he'd go, "It's hilarious," in a good way, right? In an endearing way. But he'd be like, "It's hilarious that people are reading your advice when you've never started a company." And I said, "You're right. I haven't started a company, but I hang out with you a lot and you teach me a lot." And so that would be credibility number 2. Like if I was curating something that I had learned from my mentor, I'm curating his advice. And so I'm the expert because I curated his advice on it. But because I was learning so much from him and I was hanging around him so much, I got to be really good at writing in a way that sounded like an executive, even though I'd never done it. And so my value and my credibility in the context of writing for Inc. was, it's not like I was trying to pretend like I was someone I wasn't. I wasn't saying that I was this accomplished entrepreneur when I wasn't. But it was the fact that I could write and articulate concepts so clearly that in and of itself made it worth reading, even though I wasn't necessarily the best source of information. Like people would have much rather have heard that from Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk than me. But because of my ability to articulate it, the reader goes, "I really like that. That was the easiest explanation I've gotten yet." So whatever it is that you're writing, you have to in some way explain to the reader why you. And if you can overtly explain one of these 3 ways, if you can make it clear to the reader, hey, this is what I'm writing about, this is the approach I'm using, and this is why you should listen to me on this topic, then all of a sudden it's a very easy decision for the reader to go, okay, I've bought in, I'm game, take me on this journey. I'll give you 2 minutes of my time. I'll read what you've written. So this is the endless idea generator. So all you have to do anytime you're trying to come up with ideas is work through these 3 steps. What do you want to write about? What's the proven approach that you want to use? How do you want to organize that information? And then can you tell the reader why you? Are you the expert? Did you go out and talk to all the other experts? Or are you just really good at articulating this concept, and the fact that you can articulate it so well is what removes the question from the reader? If you've ever picked up a book or read an essay by someone, you don't know them, you know nothing about them, but the writing is just so articulate and so clear, then it kind of doesn't matter. You don't even need to know who the person is. You just go, these concepts are immediately resonating with me. And vice versa, you notice the inverse happening. You pick up a book or you open an essay from someone that you really know, it's your favorite celebrity or it's the president or it's whatever. And it could be terribly written, but you go, it doesn't matter because I want to hear what this person has to say about it. So this is where credibility is not a one-size-fits-all thing. You can be credible in a lot of different ways. And so this, using the endless idea generator, is the secret to, okay, how do I quickly come up with an idea? How do I quickly figure out what approach I want to use? And how can I consciously choose for the reader, is this my own opinion? Am I curating other experts' opinions? Why is this worth reading from me as the source? And that's all there is to it.